sounds like a story to me, some crazy fable that you would not believe. Oh, but ain't you?
Welcome to the Avram Davidson universe, where you will get to read some of the best short stories ever written. As a youth, Neil Gaiman fell in love with Avram's stories. Philip K. Dick adored him. Ursula K. Le Guin found his stories wonderful. R. Bradbury compared him to Kipling. Each episode will include a special guest, an amazing short story, and a discussion of that story. Enjoy classic tales like O'er All the Seas with Oysters, The Golem, The Sources of the Nile, and many others. Who do we have on today, Robert?
Oh man, we have a great guest on today, a good friend of mine and creator of this incredible game, which you'll hear about. It's called Tipples N Taverns. Today's guest is Ryan Sprinkle, who is the product of over 5 million years of evolution, culminating in a sort of strange, hairless ape that walks on two legs. Very appropriate for today's story. When not coping,
I know.
it's perfect. When not coping
Foreshadow.
with the curse of human sentience, you can find Ryan as a perennial panelist on the Late Night Pomes Radio podcast, or moonlighting as the Tavern Wizard, author of Tipples N Taverns, the cheap, portable, and completely handmade RPG zine that you can buy at tipplesntaverns.com. That's Tipples, letter N, taverns.com. Today, with Ryan Sprinkle, we'll be reading, again, like you said, foreshadowing, a really great Avram story. It's called Sacheverell. And it was originally published in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. It's volume 26, number 3, which came out in March 1964. And it's a very special issue called the All-Star issue. And it featured Avram Davidson, but also other authors like Isaac Asimov, J.G. Ballard, and Oscar Wilde. So, very exciting episode today.
Enjoy.
Ryan Sprinkle, welcome to the Avram Davidson universe.
Hello, good to be here.
Hi. Welcome. It's nice to meet you, sort of.
Yeah, virtually.
Yeah.
That counts.
Yes.
Ryan
I'd
and
like to learn more about you.
Yeah, across time and space.
Across time and space. Ryan and I meet each other like every week across time and space on Zoom anyway. So this is like our normal relationship.
Yeah,
It just sounds-
pretty much.
With all the other podcasts. Ryan, I wanted to ask you, so we're reading Sacheverell today. We read this story by Avram Davidson, and it reminds me a lot of like when you and I, we've done our RPG podcast, we've done Late Night Poems and different just weird podcasts. And this story reminds me of kind of the tone we're looking for, the kind of playfulness that we're looking for. So that's why I wanted to choose it. And to jump into what you're working on today, can you tell us a little bit about what I have here, which is Tipples N Taverns? What is Tipples N Taverns, Ryan?
Yeah, Tipples N Taverns is a like a fantasy RPG game that I created so that I could play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends at the bar and not have to make everybody commit to buying $50 hardcover books that you have to drag around everywhere and commit to, long campaigns that take several months. So I was like, I wanted to take all the stuff I liked about D&D and like boil it down into something that was compact and portable and cheap, so that I could just get more people that weren't really into role-playing games, like make something that was accessible to them. And it's called Tipples N Taverns because I came up with it as a result of doing Late Night Poems with you at Quality Bar in Portland, where we would meet up after working at Powell's, and then we would all hang out and play poetry games and stuff. And I was like, oh man, this is so much fun. Like the spontaneity, the creativeness of everybody that was involved. And I was like, there's so much overlap here between like what we're doing with the poetry games and the kinds of stuff that I would do playing role-playing games, that I was like, what if there was a way to kind of like merge Late Night Poems and role-playing? And so at the bar, came up with Tipples N Taverns, set it in a bar, wanted it to make it something that you could play at a bar, something that you could like bust out of your bag with your friends and be like, hey, I brought this game to the bar with me tonight. Do you guys want to play? And it only takes like 5 minutes to set up, and then you're off to the races. So that's Tipples N Taverns.
Well, how does it work? So say I'm one of those people at the bar and you have a limited amount of time to explain it to me without a demo.
Yeah. So basically you don't have to worry about like spending a lot of time like making your characters or anything, because the game comes with a deck of 28 cards that represent your different species and career options. And then you just combine those cards together to come up with what your character is going to be. So you just kind of, you still roll stats like you do in Dungeons and Dragons. It only takes a minute to do, because you're just gonna roll them out real quick, combine those with the cards that you have, and the cards have all of your weapons, abilities, skills, stuff like that. So you can really get down to playing really quickly. And then where like the Late Night Poems influence comes in is I didn't want people to have like campaign books and like long ongoing like campaigns that they were going with. So very similar to like Late Night Poems, you would just like write a bunch of random words on scratch paper, and you would pass those around to other poemists to like influence their poems. So it's the same kind of idea in Tipples N Taverns. You write down random nouns and verbs and then combine those together to make whatever the quest that you're going to go on is. So depending on what gets put into the pile, you can go on like really traditional D&D quests, like, slay dragon, or you can go on like other types of quests that are maybe not so traditional, where you're like freeze snail was one that I came up with once. The object of the quest was that you had to freeze a snail. And all the characters are drunk in the game. So we're all at a bar, we're all shit-faced. And so the idea of going out and freezing a snail is like kind of, oh yeah, that's something that I would go do if I had. Of course. Few too many pints of ale. Yeah.
That's so fun. So it's is there a DM? That's what it's called, right? Like
so there is a DM. Everybody though takes a turn as DM, because all of these quests only take about like 20 minutes to get through. So I bought the book, so maybe I'll be the first DM, and I'll do a quest where we go and we like slap pig or something, right? Like and then we'll go out and I'll facilitate that quest, kick people. I'll go out.
That's the first one, I think.
That was the first one we did. So like I'll take on the role of facilitating that first quest. Once it's complete, the person to my left at the table at the bar will be the next person to run a quest. So everybody has a character, and then everybody kind of has a turn in the hot seat where they take on the responsibility of like facilitating the quest. But because the quests are so like simple and breezy, it's like, even if you've never done it before, you can kind of like, you can get through it. And I've included a card in the deck that's sort of like a cheat sheet for if you're the GM. So if you've never had to be the GM in a game, in a role-playing game before, you've got like a little card of instructions that you can have in front of you at all times. It'd be like, these are the things to look out for. This is how you make a monster. This is a list of names of NPCs that you can throw in there if you're having a brain fart. So I tried to think of like all possible like contingencies and ways that, people might get stuck or confused. And hopefully I've accounted for all of that in the game. Of course, it's like, this is just a jumping off point for the adventures that you want to go on. So, I mean, like you can definitely build bigger adventures out of like what's in the base game. But the idea was for it to be, fast and accessible, and to kind of give everybody at the table like a taste of what playing like a bigger RPG might be like. So this is great. If like your friends aren't really like ready to commit to like D&D, but you really want to like lure them in, like bust out Tipples N Taverns at a party one night, get everybody into the mood. And then like maybe after they've, played a couple rounds of TNT, they might be ready to get into D&D.
Oh, I love that. Because that's true. I've always loved RPGs. Specifically, I played Dungeons and Dragons and City of Mist, not like a lot. But I have played those, and I've led a few quests myself, but it is so much setup. And I will tell you, I don't have any like direct connection with any of the close people in my life with like other people who'd want to do it, if that makes any sense at all. It would take a lot of coaxing to get people to even feel ready to do something like that at all. But it's like, I know everybody can do it. So it's just it's really exciting to have a system that's easier to just pick up and go.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to tap into. I really wanted to make this something that was like accessible for people and something that you could really like spring on somebody without any kind of notice. Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to make a comparison while you were talking, Ryan. I started thinking like the difference in fantasy books, sci-fi and fantasy books, like we have an Avram book, and then maybe we have like a Brandon Sanderson book. Avram and this story, Sacheverell, where we have, it's only, I think, 10 pages. It's very short, jumps you right into the fantasy. You're kind of thrown into the story. It's very much like playing TNT, where you can just jump right in. Yeah, and you have to do a lot of improvisation. You have to really make some logical jumps, some quick jumps. So I feel like if you are really interested in Avram Davidson, TNT is the right game to jump into. You make, it's true, you kind of make those really thrilling imagination jumps, whereas like D&D is great, of course, but it will go for like 50 times. You know,
right,
like
more slow world building, like a sci-fi. Right.
Yeah, which is really fun too. But it is like reading the whole Wheel of Time or something, where it's like, oh, I've put a lot of time, you know. But if you want that kind of, I wouldn't exactly say cerebral, but kind of that the fire that gets like kind of lighted in your brain suddenly, TNT and Sacheverell or the other kind of Avram short stories, I think are really similar.
I think that's a really apt comparison. Yeah, because it's like, TNT is more like telling short stories than it is like telling like long form fiction that goes on and on and on. Yeah, this is, and so like the short story that we're looking at today is really like kind of like a snapshot of just like a moment in time, and like TNT can kind of be like that too in terms of like comparison to a larger Dungeons and Dragons campaign.
Oh yeah, and this is what's crazy too. Like this is why I picked Sacheverell, and I thought it'd be perfect for us. It's just like one of our old campaigns that we've had, or very similar anyway, where it was just, you know, I think it was
way.
Oh yeah.
Don't give any spoilers away. Our
Okay.
listeners haven't heard yet.
Okay, good point. But the
we can talk about it after.
We'll talk about it after. You're right. Okay, we should jump in now, listen to the story, and then spoilers be damned, we're talking about it all after that. Everyone's heard it at that point. So
I know this must be excruciating for those who haven't listened to it yet.
I know there's so many references
just
we're doing.
It's so exciting.
I know. Okay, so
all right, let's dive in.
We're gonna dive in. This is Sacheverell by Avram Davidson.
Sacheverell. The front windows of the room were boarded up, and inside it was dark and cold, and smelled very bad. There was a stained mattress on which a man, wrapped in a blanket, lay snoring, a chair with no back, a table which held the remains of a bag of hamburgers, several punched beer cans, and a penny candle which cast shadows all around. There was a scuffling sound in the shadows, then a tiny, rattling, chattering noise. Then a thin and tiny voice said, tentatively, "You must be very cold, George." No reply. "Because I know I'm very cold." The voice faded out. After a moment it said, "He's still asleep. A man needs his rest. It's very hard." The voice seemed to be listening for something, seemed not to hear it. After an instant, in a different tone, it said, "All right." It asked the silence. The chattering broke out again for just a second. Then the voice said, "Good afternoon, Princess. Good afternoon, Madam. And General, how very nice to see you. I wish to invite you to a tea party. We will use the best set of doll dishes, and if anyone wishes to partake of something stronger, I believe the Professor—" The voice faltered, continued, "has a drop of the Oh Be Joyful in a bottle on the sideboard, and now pray take seats." The wind sounded outside. When it died away, leaving the candle flame dancing, There was a humming noise which rose and fell like a moan, then ended abruptly on a sort of click. The voice resumed, wavering at first. Coco and Moco? No, I'm very sorry. I really can't invite them. They're very stupid. They don't know how to behave and they can't even talk. The man on the stained mattress woke in a convulsive movement that brought him sitting up with a cry. He threw his head to the right and left and grimaced and struck at the air. "Did you have a bad dream, George?" The voice asked uncertainly. George said, thrusting at his eyes with the cushions of his palms. He dropped his hands, cleared his throat, and spat thickly. Then he reached out and grabbed the slack of a chain lying on the floor, one end fastened to a table leg, and began to pull it in. The chain resisted. He tugged. Something fell and squeaked, and George, continuing to pull, hauled in his prize and seized it. "Sacheverell." "I hope you didn't have a bad dream, George." "Sacheverell, was anybody here? You lie to me and—" "No, George, honest, nobody was here, George." "You lie to me and I'll kill you." "I wouldn't lie to you, George. I know it's wicked to lie." George glared at him out of his reddened eyes, took a firmer grip with both hands, and squeezed. Sacheverell cried out, thrust his face at George's wrist. His teeth clicked on air. George released him abruptly, and he scuttled away. George smeared at his trouser leg with his sleeve, made a noise of disgust. "Look what you done, you filthy little ape!" he shouted. Sacheverell whimpered in the shadows. "I can't help it, George. I haven't got any sphincter muscle, and you scared me. You hurt me." George groaned, huddled in under his blanket. $1 million on the end of this chain," he said. "And I'm living in this hole here like a wino, like a smoky, like a bum." He struck the floor with his fist. "It don't make sense," he cried, shifting around till he was on all fours, then pushing himself erect. Wrapping the blanket around his shoulders, he shambled quickly to the door, checked the bolt, then examined in turn the boarded-up front windows and the catch on the barred and frost-rimmed black window. Then he did something in a corner, cursing and sighing. Under the table, Sacheverell tugged on his chain ineffectually. "I don't like it here, George," he said. "It's cold, and it's dirty, and I'm dirty and cold, too, and I'm hungry. It's all dark here, and nobody ever comes here, and I don't like it, George. I don't like it here one bit. I wish I was back with the professor again. I was very happy then. The professor was nice to me, and so was the princess and Madame Opal and the general. They were the only ones in on the secret until you found out." George swung around and looked at him. One eye sparked in the candlelight. "We used to have tea parties, and Madame Opal always brought chocolates when she came, even when she came alone, and she read love stories to me out of a magazine book with pictures, and they were all true. Why can't I be back with the professor again?" George swallowed and opened his mouth with a little smacking sound. "Professor Whitman died of a heart attack," he said. Sacheverell looked at him, head cocked. "An attack?" "So he's dead, so forget about him." The words tore out of the man's mouth. He padded across the room. Sacheverell retreated to the end of his chain. "I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. In a few weeks now, they'll tear this rotten building down." "Maybe," he said slyly, putting his foot down on the chain, "I'll sell you to a zoo, where you belong." He bent, grunting, and picked up the chain. Sacheverell's teeth began to chatter. "I don't!" he shrilled. "I don't belong in a zoo! The little people they have there are stupid! They don't know how to behave, and they can't even talk!" George closed one eye, nodded, slowly, very slowly, drew in the chin. "Come on," he said. "Level with me. Professor Whitman had a nice little act there. How come he quit and took off and came here?" Slowly he drew in the chain. Sacheverell trembled but did not resist. "We were going to go to a laboratory in a college," he said. "He told me it was a waste to keep me doing silly tricks with Coco and Moco when I was so smart. He should have done it before, he said." George's mouth turned up on one side, creasing the stubble. "Nah, Sacheverell," he said. "That don't make sense. You know what they do to monkeys in them labs? They cut 'em up. That's all I know. I went to one and I asked. They pay about $15, and then they cut 'em up." He made a scissors out of his fingers and went, Sacheverell shuddered. George set his foot on the chain again and took hold of him by the neck. He poked him in the stomach with his finger. Stiff. It had grown colder. The man's breath shone misty in the tainted air. He poked again. Sacheverell made a sick noise, struggled. "Come on," George said. "Level with me. There's $1 million inside of you, you dirty little ape. There's gotta be. Only I don't know how. So you tell me." Sacheverell whimpered. "I don't know, George. I don't know." The man scowled, then grinned slyly. "That's what you say. I'm not so sure. You think I don't know that if they found out they'd take you away from me? Sure, $1 million. How come I'm being followed if they don't know? First a guy with a beard, then a kid in a red snowsuit. I seen them together. Listen, you friggin' little jocko, you better think I'm telling you. You better think hard." He poked again with his stiff and dirty finger, and again. "I always knew, see, I always knew that there was $1 million waiting for me somewhere, if I only kept my eyes open. What the hell is a guy like me doing unloading crates in the fruit market when I got plans for $1 million? And then—" His voice sank, and his eyes narrowed. "This Professor Whitman came along and put up at the Eagle Hotel. I caught his act in the sticks once. I've been around. First, I thought he was practicing ventriloquism. Then, I found out about you. You was the other voice in his room, and that's when I—" Abruptly he stopped. The outside door opened with a rusty squeal, and footfalls sounded in the hall. Someone knocked. Someone tried the knob. Someone said, "Sacheverell? Sacheverell!" And George clamped his hairy, filthy hand over the captive's mouth. Sacheverell jerked and twitched and rolled his eyes. The voice made a disappointed noise. The footfalls moved uncertainly, started to retreat. And then Sacheverell kicked out at George's crotch. The man grunted, cursed, lost his grip. "Help!" Sacheverell cried. "Help! Help! Save me!" Fists beat on the door. The glass in the back window crashed and fell to the floor. A wizened old man's face peered through the opening, withdrew. George ran to the door, then turned to chase Sacheverell, who fled, shrieking hysterically. A tiny figure in a red snowsuit squeezed through the bars of the back window and ran to pull the bolt on the door. Someone in boots and a plaid jacket and a woolen watch cap burst in, melting snow glittering on a big black beard. "Save me!" Sacheverell screamed, dashing from side to side. "He attacked Professor Whitman and knocked him down, and he didn't get up again!" George stooped, picking up the chair, but the red snowsuit got between his legs and he stumbled. The chair was jerked from his hands. He came up with his fists clenched, and the bearded person struck down with the chair. It caught him across the bridge of the nose with a crunching noise. He fell, turned over, stayed down. Silence. Sacheverell hiccuped. Then he said, "Why are you wearing men's clothing, Princess Zaga?" "The bearded man attracts quite enough attention, thank you," the princess said, disengaging the chain. "No need to advertise. Let's get out of here." She picked him up, and the three of them went out into the black, deserted street, boarded shut windows staring blindly. The snow fell thickly, drifting into the ravaged hall and into the room where George's blood, in a small pool, had already begun to freeze. "That's our car, Sacheverell," said the man in the red snowsuit, thrusting a cigar into his child-sized, jaded old face. "What a time!" "I assume you are still with the carnival, General Pinky?" "No, Kitty. The new owners wouldn't recognize the union, so we quit and retired on Social Security in Sarasota. You'll like it there. Not that the unions are much better, mind you. Bismarckian devices to dissuade the working classes from industrial government on a truly Marxian socialist labor basis. We got a television set, Kitty." And look who's waiting for you. Princess Zaga opened the station wagon and handed Sacheverell inside. There, in the back seat, was the hugest, the vastest, the fattest woman in the world. "Princess Opal!" Sacheverell cried, leaping into her arms, and was buried in the wide expanse of her bosom and bathed in her warm Gothic tears. She called him her precious, and her little boy, and her very own Peter Pan. "It was Madame Opal who planned this all," Princess Zaga remarked, starting the car and driving off. General Pinky lit his cigar and opened a copy of The Weekly People. "Yes, I did. Yes, I did," Madame Opal murmured, kissing and hugging Sacheverell. "Oh, how neglected you are! Oh, how thin! We'll have a tea party, just like we used to, the very best doll dishes. We'll see you eat nice, and we'll wash you and comb you and put ribbons around your neck." Sacheverell began to weep. "Oh, it was awful with George," he said. Never mind, he didn't know any better," Madame Opal said soothingly. "The hell he didn't," snapped Princess Zaga. "Predatory capitalism," General Pinky began. Never mind. Forget about it, darling. It was only a bad dream." Sacheverell dried his tears on Madame Opal's enormous, spangled velvet bosom. "George was very mean to me," he said. "He treated me very mean. But worst of all, you know, Madame Opal, he lied to me. He lied to me all the time, and I almost believed him. That was the most horrible part of all. I almost believed that I was a monkey."
So that was Sacheverell by Avram Davidson. Emma, what did you think?
I listened to this one before I read it, which is not my normal sequence, and while I was driving, and I probably shouldn't have been driving, because this one, it'd be like a sentence and I'd be like, what?
Yeah.
And I'd have to go back and listen to it again. This is one of the questions I want to ask you later, Ryan, but this one threw me multiple times. Trust me, that's not new with Avram whatsoever, but that's normally like one giant rug pull. Do you know what I mean? But this one felt like a bunch of little ones.
Yeah.
A bunch of little ones. And a bunch of big ones.
A bunch of big ones. I still feel uncertain about it too. Like I'm like, read it many times now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I loved it. I loved it. What did you guys think?
Oh, I thought it was really cool. I really dug it. Yeah, I was hooked right from the opening paragraph. Like such great like scene setting in that very first line. Like for me to read anything, like you gotta hook me with that first line. So it's like when I go to the bookstore, it's like I open up a book and I read like the first line of a book. And if that first line doesn't like immediately draw me in, then that book's going back on the shelf. This one got me right away. Just with the description of this like ramshackle shack that this guy is living in, I was already like, oh cool, this is disgusting. I can't wait to find out where this goes. This guy is living in squalor. Like, what are we doing here? All right, moving right along. I thought it was a great like introduction to the story that really just drew me right in.
Yeah, and then he went right into the noises. It was like it was just called The Voice, right? And then it was such a vivid visual description, like the hamburger meat on the table, all of that. And then it was all audio. It was who we come to find out, Sacheverell's voice. And then there was like the sound of the wind, and there was like there was another sound that had been mentioned, but there was this moment, and I noticed this because I was listening to it. I was like, wow, this is helpful. Like all the audio. This is all audio descriptions right now for a good stint. And it read like a mystery at the beginning.
I agree. Sorry, the sound, was it the click, the second sound you're talking about?
Yes.
That drove me crazy. I still don't know what that is. What did that mean?
Oh. I don't know.
Yeah, because it's all audio, and so we have this guy who's living in squalor. He's asleep. Is his name Dave or is it George? George, right? George is this total asshole, but also maybe like doesn't quite understand how the world works. He's a jerk, but there's also he doesn't quite have grips on reality, I think. But anyway, so he's asleep. And then we have Sacheverell, who starts out as just a voice, maybe because as the readers, we're just being thrown in and we're not given enough information. We're not like purposely, we're kind of kept behind a veil. So we just hear a voice. But that voice also does sound like a recording with that click. I know it's not, but it did make isn't that weird?
Interesting. Yes. I see. I thought it was oh my gosh.
I think it's just a weird word to describe the quality of Sacheverell's voice. I don't think it's an actual audio recording, but it made me like there's so many everything gets cast into doubt again and again and again in this story, to the point where I'm thinking, does that click mean something?
Yeah.
What I really liked about this story a lot is it's so short, but it's also so economical.
Yeah.
Like every sentence builds on your previous understanding of what the situation is. Like at first, Sacheverell is just a voice, and then you start to get clues about like. At first, I didn't even know, is he real? Is he a ghost? Is he haunting this shack? Like, what is it?
Was this part of the bad dream? But then George woke up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's like you so much is withheld at the beginning, but the story, like you said, it's only like 5 pages long. It's such a condensed little snippet of time, but every sentence in the story, it's like okay, so there's this thing in music called the wall of sound, which like if you've ever heard like Phil Spector was famous for it, asshole though that he was, but he invented the wall of sound, and it's like this thing where it's like if you've ever heard like that Righteous Brothers, you've lost that love and feeling, like that song starts out very small, and as the song goes on, it just grows and grows and grows. And that was the idea of like the wall of sound. And like this story is the way the story is told is kind of like the wall of sound, where everything kind of grows and builds and layer and layer is exposed, you know, as you continue through the story, and you start to get an idea of like, okay, so, you know, at first, like, is it okay? How far into the story can I go?
Oh yeah.
The whole thing.
Okay, so like, you know, at first, like he's just a voice, and is it part of the dream? Then it's like, oh, okay, so it's a monkey or something. Like you don't really know at first, and you're like, oh, okay, was he stolen from a lab? But then no, it turns out he was stolen from a carnival. Like the way that the layers are peeled back on this is really satisfying, because of how much is crammed into such a small space in this story, and the way that it just sort of builds upon. I feel like I'm just rambling now, but like
no
I'm
clearly I am not as economical a storyteller as Avram is.
Yeah, I don't know if we play the introduction on this episode, but
yeah,
in the introduction,
really interesting.
Whoever writes it also mentioned that this is like just every single word mattered in this particular story. But I think with Avram in general, whoever wrote the intro would agree that it's just a trend. And I will confess, like, I have to pay super close attention when I read this. Like it is a different reading experience, reading Avram, than reading anything else. I need to really give it my full attention, because like a few sentences into the description of this one, I had to listen to it twice. I was like, oh my God, I am not going to be able to remember all this. I was like trying to picture everything, and then I was just like, I'm just going to have to paint this scene in layers and read it 3 times because or listen to it 3 times. But it's it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way of experiencing a story.
I think so. I think, and all the layers, they're really special too, because they're all kind of on a ring. Like they all happen a second time in a different way. And so as you peel as you peel back the layers, it's almost like you're putting the layer again on the other side of something. Like one of those chocolate oranges, you're peeling off the foil, but then putting the foil back on the other side, and it just keeps going and going. Feels like one of those magician two shapes that you have to pull them through each other, and you can't unless you put them in the right configuration, something like that.
Yeah.
Like an illusion or like magic. But for instance, the dream, like you said, it starts out as just a voice coming into this squalor, into this horrible situation. And then at the end, one of the characters acknowledges that it was a dream in a way that's just maybe trying to comfort the character. They're like, oh, it's okay. That was all just a dream. And you're like, well, was it? You think that they're just comforting the character. And that happens a second time when that same person, so in this like carnival, I guess, like kind of freak show friendship, it's like this group who would normally be put into a freak show. So there's like the bearded lady, the short man, the talking monkey, or just really hairy person. We're unsure.
Like a monkey boy, yeah.
Monkey boy. Hard to say.
Yeah, the end got me where it's like, and I wasn't even a monkey. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even believe it, because a monkey would be in a carnival too.
Yeah. Well, it really reminded me of there's this fantastic episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Captain Picard gets held captive by the Cardassians, and they're holding him in this cell, and they're just like, almost like for fun, they're just trying to break his mind into little bits. And so the Cardassian goes in there every day, and he's like, there's 5 lights in this room. And Picard's like, clearly there are 4 lights, sir. I can count to 4. And then every time he says there's 4 lights, they like beat the shit out of him. They just brutally yeah. And so eventually, like, Picard's been held in captivity for like months and months and months on end, as like the crew of the Enterprise tries to track him down and find him. And the end of that episode of Star Trek is actually really similar to the end of this story. Because, you know, there's this really pivotal scene. Picard like stands up to the Cardassian, he goes, there are 4 lights. You know, and it's like, oh, the emotion, right? But at the end, he confesses to Counselor Troy that, like, they almost got him. In the end, he was, right before the crew comes in and rescues him from this prison, he says, I was ready to say that there are 5 lights here. Like, they were going to let him go. As long as you just admit that there's 5 lights in this room, we'll let you go. And he's like, I was ready. And not only was I ready to say there was 5 lights, I saw 5 lights. I could see the 5th light. Like, that's how, like, they gaslit him into and just completely broke him down. And that's really like similar to what George is doing to Sacheverell in this story. Is like, and I don't know that George necessarily knows that he's lying to him about being a monkey. He might really legitimately believe he's a monkey. I mean, like, he's clearly good enough for the circus to put on the talking monkey act, but like, I just thought it was really, like, George just like beating it into him that you're this monkey, and like, he almost believes it himself until he's finally, reunited with his friends and family.
Yeah, I almost thought that Sacheverell was crazy, like, whether or not he was a monkey or a human, but that the princesses didn't exist, the professor didn't exist, like, none of that even happened.
Yeah,
that's a part of the ring structure too, because they come back in. The princess promises Sacheverell a tea party. He says, "Oh, that was all a dream. Now let's go back and have a tea party together." And the story actually opens up with a tea party that he's pretending. And we're not told that. We just hear the voices, and the voices of the other people who are just Sacheverell. So again, are they actually going to have a tea party? Is he just crazy and imagining this all again? It's cast in doubt again.
It's kind of this whole life that happened, and then we come into the story as readers, and we're in this new phase, and then he goes back to the old life. Because again, I was kind of reading it and predisposed to think that all of that old life was bullshit and didn't actually happen. I almost believed George when he said that the professor was probably going to sell him to a lab, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like probably that Sacheverell is just a dumb organism. I believed he was a monkey for a while. Well, first I thought he was a fantastical creature. I didn't know if we were going to be magical about it, like the goobers. And then I was like, okay, it's got to be a monkey because of the whole bite thing. And then so then I was like, okay, he's probably just a little brainwashed little monkey. And I didn't like George at all, but that was just kind of the way my brain was interpreting things. And then cycles right on back, and I still don't know who the good guys are. I mean, none of them seem good, but like, are the people from the carnival even good?
I like them anyway.
Yeah, I liked them a lot. The carnival people were fascinating. Yeah.
Who is your favorite character, Ryan?
Oh, General Pinky, absolutely, without a doubt. This creepy little Benjamin Button man that's like talking about
the socialist.
He's so like hardcore socialist that like even unions are like not like socialist enough for him. It's like those Bismarckian unions that trick the working class into thinking they have a. It was like that dude cracked me up, because then like, follows it up with, "Don't worry though, we got a TV.
Yeah, we got a TV.
Yeah, we'll still participate in advertiser culture and consumerism and everything because we got our TVs. We're set."
That crushed me too. Same.
Yeah, I loved those guys, but it is unclear. Like the professor who's dead.
Yeah,
maybe was uncool. He's been murdered. I think George murdered the professor, but the professor was also making Sacheverell hang out with the monkeys all the time. To the point.
But then the professor had a change of heart. He was like, "Well, I'm going to take you to Harvard and enroll you in classes and stuff." He was like, "I'm going to take you to school."
Ambiguous.
I don't know why. I really like. It never even occurred to me that the carnival people were fake.
I believe in them. I was like, oh wow. I just thought it was like another twist and turn in the story. Because I mean, George clearly sees them because they follow him, and he talks about the bearded man and the kid in the snowsuit and everything. So they beat him to a bloody pulp at the end of the end of the episode. Yeah. The end of the story kind of ends like an episode of Animaniacs. Like they hello, princess.
I definitely believed in them by the end. When there was blood on the floor, I believed that they were real.
You know, the George character I'm really interested in. The first scene that we see him, like he's in a bad situation. He's in this tiny little place that's freezing. Like he and Sacheverell might freeze to death because it's in the middle of winter. They don't have enough warm clothes. They don't have enough blankets. It's full of empty beer cans and expired hamburgers, this place.
Mm-hmm.
But
it sounds a lot like my house.
Watch out for a little kid in a snowsuit.
Fuck, I'm in this picture and I don't like it.
Yeah, let me
Throw away the hamburger meat. But the George, like when does he come onto the scene? I think he maybe is like a fan, someone who watched the show and then believed so hard that in this illusion that this monkey was a talking monkey, stole him, believed that, wow, I've discovered something. They didn't let this guy get to his full potential. I'm going to make $1 million. And he keeps telling Sacheverell, like, I know you're worth $1 million. He has him chained to him. He says, there's $1 million at the end of this chain. And he just believes in the magic and the illusion so much that he's going to take advantage of it. It's a really sinister version of like believing in magic. And this whole story like makes the reader also have to believe in certain things, not believe in other things. I just thought George is really interesting.
George is fascinating. He's a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. No, for real. Like he's like a blue collar dude. He talks about like moving crates at the grocery store and whatnot. Yeah. So he's this poor working class schmuck who thought that, you know, he could take a shortcut to $1 million because he deserved
in a capitalist world.
Yeah, as General Pinky would say, predatory capitalism.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's trying to take a shortcut to $1 million by like doing this despicable act of like kidnapping this guy from the safety of his carnival home or whatever, you know. He's to George, it's just a means to an end. Like he clearly doesn't care about the well-being of Sacheverell, keeping him chained up under the table in this cold shack, you know, freezing with just hamburgers to eat and whatnot. Although the hamburgers maybe not so bad, but but yeah, he's like I don't know. I thought George was a really interesting like flip side to General Pinky at the end, because George is trying to like cheat and shortcut capitalism to get what he believes he deserves from all of his hard work and labor. You know, he puts in so much labor at the grocery store and he still doesn't get his $1 million, but he knows in his heart that he deserves $1 million. But like, why do you deserve $1 million?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I was like, please, me too. George, you don't see me stealing monkeys.
But that's like this thing that, you know, you hear about sometimes with like people that like, you know, like working class people that like vote in favor of like GOP politicians who only do tax cuts for billionaires, and like the working class people that put those politicians in office are never going to see the benefits of those policies because they are not millionaires, but they still vote for that stuff because to them they are temporarily embarrassed millionaires. They believe that they deserve those millions of dollars and they're entitled to those millions of dollars. And one day they will be a millionaire. And when they're a millionaire, they're going to want those policies in place to protect their millions of dollars. But the thing is, they're not thinking long term. They don't have the $1 million yet. Those policies aren't going to help them in any way. And it's like George is kind of like the epitome of that character. Yeah, he's gone out of his way to try to like cheat the system, and now he gets, you know, a crew of carnies and they beat the shit out of him.
Yeah. And there's also
a working class union carnies, by the way.
Retired. I was just gonna say there are also some invisible whether or not they're temporarily embarrassed or just straight up are currently millionaires, the people who ran the carnival to begin with.
Yeah.
I don't know. My reading wasn't that the carnies ran themselves. It felt almost like they had skin as well.
Yeah.
Something?
Well, it says that the carnies, there's a new owner at the carnival who won't recognize the union. And that was like line in the sand for General Pinky. So because they quit the carnival and retire because the carnival won't recognize their union. So they go on Social Security and retire, which is like, whoa, cool.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Like whoever owned it originally must have not been taking too much advantage at all of the carnies, as long as General Pinky was there to defend them.
Yeah, as long as General Pinky was there, because it's like, unions are kind of like warning labels on toxic chemicals. It's like, the bottle of Windex didn't need to say don't spray into your eye until someone did. And unions are kind of like the same way. It's like, well, you didn't need a union until management tried to fuck you over. And it's like, well, now I think we need a union. So it's like probably the original carnival owners weren't much better, but at least they allowed the union. So
yeah, well, the original owner was the professor, right? And the professor is interesting. Was he? I think the original owner.
I don't know. That was unclear to me.
I assumed he was just another act. Like he trots out Sacheverell and Coco and Moco. To be like, oh, look, the three monkeys and one can talk. Because I'm the professor. He's not even a real professor, probably. It's just his carnival name.
But it was unclear to me too. I was like, has this guy seen many different lives?
Well, because it plays into the layering of the story, because the first thing that George says is that the professor is going to take you to a laboratory where they're going to cut you up. Yeah. So you think, at that point you think, it's a real professor and this is a real talking monkey that would be really cut up in a lab. But then as you read on and you discover, oh no, it's not a science thing, it's a carnival thing. It's like, oh, okay, this is like anyone in a carnival can call themselves professor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's true. There's an interesting thing, though. We can't really trust anything that George is saying, but the belief in different illusions is kind of interesting, where the professor has two options for Sacheverell. One is sending him to the laboratory to be cut up. The other one is to send him to Harvard. So they're both like, they're both intellectual. It's kind of the opposite of George, where you're an embarrassed millionaire. This is an embarrassed academic, where, but we don't get as much of the.
Yeah, we don't really get a lot of the professor's like motivations because he's dead. But I don't know. I mean, what I got at the end of the story, like looking back at, after I got to the end of it and realized the big twist at the end, I went back and read the whole thing start to finish again, because I was just like, I have to see it with the perspective of full knowledge. Yeah. And I think that if my read on the professor is that, okay, so if Sacheverell isn't a monkey and he's just a monkey boy, then maybe the professor just took pity on him and was like, hey man, you're too smart for carnival life. Like, yes, you've got a lot of hair, but like you could still make it if you had a proper education. So like, I don't know. I thought the professor to be a good character. I don't know. Hard to say. I really sympathize with the carnies. I don't know why.
Hey, me too. Well, that's I like I'm down for the carny and the carny life. And Sacheverell seemed to be in good relation with the professor. And by the end of it, once I met the carnies, and I was like, wow, these are good people who are coming to fetch their, like, who are murdering for their homies. Like, these are ride or die. Like, I'm sold. So then I'm like, I can kind of trust Sacheverell's read on people if he likes professors. Do you know what I mean?
That's a good point. Wow.
So if you were to make this into an RPG, Ryan, how do you see it playing out?
This would be a really, like, I love like carnival, like man, there was this great show on HBO back in the day, Carnival, that was like all set in like a carnival very similar to this, like a freak shows kind of situation. The Elephant Man, like I love stories about carnival freaks and geeks and like stuff like that. Yeah, so like I think like a carnival based RPG world would be like a lot of fun, like especially if it was something like Carnival, where like there's like a supernatural element to like what's happening in the circus setting. like I think that world of like just like circus carnies and freak shows has a lot of like potential to overlap with like fun supernatural elements, where you could have like a party of different carnies, and you can take like your traditional bearded ladies and Benjamin Buttons and guys like that are in Sacheverell, and convert those into really fun, viable like RPG characters. Like it would be really, like taking the, because that's like when I was coming up with TNT and like trying to like a lot of TNT is very blatantly based on Dungeons and Dragons, where like I literally took like the player's handbook and went like, okay, so like what are the things about dwarves and elves that like I think can, because D&D there's so much progression to like to your characters. You can level up your characters and build them out, and they gain more power and more abilities the more you play them. And TNT is very much like, when you're done playing with that character at the end of the night, you can throw that character away. Like they don't have a lot of like growth potential because they're not meant to grow in the same way that a Dungeons and Dragons character does. But in creating those TNT characters and going through the Dungeons and Dragons like player's handbook and figuring out like what to keep, what to discard, what to change, I was really looking at like what is like the essence of like what makes a D&D dwarf a dwarf, and I think you can do the same thing with like carnies and freak show people and be like, okay, so like you take like a bearded lady, and like in this story, she disguises herself as a bearded man so that she doesn't draw as much attention, right? So like maybe if you play as the bearded lady, you get like a skill bonus to disguises or something. You can camouflage yourself as a man, and you get bonuses on your checks, if people are trying to determine if it's really you or not or something. Or if it's the same thing with like the Benjamin Button guy, you disguise how old you are, and you can pass yourself off as like a tiny man or like a boy or a child or something. So I mean, like I think there's a lot of potential and overlap between like the way we look at like magical characters in Dungeons and Dragons and like freak show people, which I just think is like a really like interesting like world to be in. I think like if I'm sure out there in the multitudes of like homemade RPGs and things, because I mean like I've seen so many. I saw one that was based on Frasier. It was called like Frost Giants and Scrambled Eggs. It's like if you can make Frasier into an RPG, like you can make anything into an RPG. But I think like I would like to play an RPG that was like set in this world of like Sacheverell and like people like people like villains like George that are like they're not like it's not a magical lich, it's just like some shitty dude that kidnaps your monkey pal, right. And then you and your other freak show friends have to figure out how you're gonna get them back. Like that's a fun little campaign. That's like a good little 30-minute campaign you can run with your friends.
I want to do it.
Tell this story from the carnies perspective instead of Sacheverell's perspective, and you've got a great campaign.
Nice.
We in one of the episodes, the freeze snail one, I remember we went to go see a bearded lady. There was a whole carnival outside the Loose Goose Tavern. That would be really interesting. It'd be cool to see like a special edition of TNT that's carnival themed or something like that.
Oh yeah, we could do that. We tied into
Wait, side note, what if we use this as a premise and do it from the other perspective? We
should. Yeah, we should.
That
would be fun. That would be a really fun episode of we tie it in. Yeah. I think that would work. Yeah.
Emma, we got to have you on TNT sometime. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm there. I was just going to ask about what about Netflix series, like a TV show, yeah. Or we asked this question, and we've gotten a lot of like, actually, this might be best as a theater piece. So that's also an option, but like in terms of putting it on stage or on screen, on TV, how do you see that playing out? Do you see any particular actors playing any of these characters?
This is a hard one to like fantasy cast because I don't because of like the absurdity of the carnies and stuff. I'm like, okay, so like who would I cast as the world's fattest woman? I don't know. Like
I've had that problem with this question.
So but when I was reading this, I was actually thinking like, oh, this would be like a really fun like animated thing. Like I could really see this as like an animated like a one-off episode of an animated anthology show or something.
Yeah.
Like because then you can get away with doing like weird character designs like the carnies and not have it feel as odd.
Yeah.
But if I had to cast a human, for Sacheverell the monkey boy, like the only thing that I could picture in my head was like Eddie Munster. So it's like I know that he's probably a grown man now at this point, but if I could go back in time and get Munster's era at young man Eddie Munster.
Oh my god!
I think I'm gonna saw a picture.
Oh my god!
Because he's like a little werewolf boy that lives in a kitchen cabinet. So like, like that's all I can picture.
Yeah.
Total typecast. Yeah.
That's your niche, Eddie. Except
and like for George, I'm like, this is probably also typecasting, but like because his name is George, I could only picture Gary Sinise from Of Mice and Men, because like it just felt like the right like time period for this story. It feels like a story that takes place in like kind of like the 30s, like the labor unions and everything. Like it feels very like Of Mice and Men kind of, you know. So like I don't know. So in my head, as I'm reading the story, I'm picturing Eddie Munster and Gary Sinise as like the two main characters, and then like the wrinkly Benjamin Button baby as General Pinky.
Brad Pitt.
Oh
yeah,
Brad Pitt.
but as the wrinkly baby, not as like
no, not Pink.
not fake Brad Pitt. Cool.
Yes, definitely more of a valley.
What about General Pinky?
Well, he's the Benjamin.
He's Benjamin Button. Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
right. I'm thinking of the bearded princess.
Oh yeah. Who would look good with a beard?
I can't think of. Yeah, those are ones which not as fleshed out. Not as much dialogue for them.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't get a great like window into Princess Zaga or Madame Opal, which is unfortunate. Although Madame Opal is described as the brains of the operation, which I love.
Yeah.
Definitely gives the whole like so you got to have the looks, the brains, the muscle, and the wild card. So if Madame Opal is the brains, obviously the bearded lady is the muscle.
Is the looks. Oh, right.
Well, because she hits George over the head with a chair. Like
but I would probably be staring at her the whole time, wondering what's going on with her.
The looks.
Okay, so Madame Opal is both the brains and the looks. The bearded lady is the muscle. General Pinky to me seems like maybe the wild card.
Oh yeah. And Sacheverell.
And then Sacheverell could be the looks.
He's the looks.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Especially if he was spatially ambiguous.
Well, he's abducted primarily because of his looks, I guess.
Yeah,
but I mean, like, could he use his? So if we're looking at these four carnies in sort of like an A-team situation though, where they're going to go out on adventures.
Exactly what I've been thinking of the whole time.
Yeah. So the question is, could he use his looks to, you know, like to his advantage to con somebody or woo somebody?
Absolutely.
He cons the whole audience. Because everyone.
He does. Oh, good point. Good, very good point. Yeah. Okay. So Sacheverell's the looks. Pinky is the wild card. Bearded lady is the muscle. Opal is the brains.
Dream team.
Right. Dream team. The dream team. Carnival team. I think let's cast it and let's make this carnival TNT happen.
Oh yeah, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So Ryan, where can we get TNT? How do we buy this? How do we play it? Can we listen to it? What do we do?
Yeah, Tipples N Taverns, the completely homemade zine that I make myself in this very laundry room that I record from, and at the IPRC.
Yeah,
there it is, IPRC.
The Independent Publishing Resource Center in Portland.
Yes, Independent Publishing Resource Center, where you can go and make books yourself. I make it, I sell it. You can buy it at tipplesntaverns.com. TIPPLES, the letter N, TAVERNS.com. Tipplesntaverns.com. You can buy it. It costs $10. It's a lot of fun. I mail it to you, and then you play it at the bar with your friends.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
If you want to get a feel for it, you can go to on Spotify too. Tipples N Taverns. We have a podcast where we play it, and Emma's going to be on that soon.
Yeah,
Yes.
you can hear me and Bobby, and soon Emma, and we were doing a carnival adventure for you guys. It'll be a lot of fun.
It'll be a good time. Good time had by all. All right, Ryan Sprinkle, thank you very much for coming on to the Avram Davidson universe. Very good to see you both. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Emma.
This was a blast. Thanks for having me.
This is so fun.
All right.
And thank you for introducing me to Avram Davidson. This is the first of his stories that I read, but I really,
cool.
really enjoyed it.
I knew you would.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you would love the style. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to seek out more. I'm going to listen to other episodes of this.
Yeah.
Get into it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Ryan Sprinkle. Until
Thank
next time.
you.
God only knows.
Bye.
It sounds like a story to me, some crazy fable that you would not believe.